And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Chapter 4 of Vlad the Impaler. We are currently a knight with an evil catacomb king arm. I assume it's evil, because, torturing and disemboweling children and whatnot. I don't know how I feel about it. Well, I do know, I don't like it. Anyways, let's see what we can do. You descend the cramped staircase below the city streets. At the bottom, you are faced with a heavily armored man in a dark hood. If you're right, and everything you've witnessed so far is to be believed, then the answers you need are on the other side of the gate that this man is guarding. If you are wrong, then he will certainly kill you. Gambling with your life, you reach around your neck and produce the silver amulet of the cross and dragon. The man nods and then opens the gate for you to pass within. As you plunge deeper beneath the city, you breathe in relief. Your plan has worked. He thinks you're a knight from the Order of the Dragon, but all your bravado fades as you enter their secret sanctum. Hooded men and women kneel in rows, murmuring twisted prayers to the silver dragon crosses in their hands. On the walls hang bodies mutilated in ritualistic ways with symbols painted in their own blood. Symbols that you have seen all across your encounters in the city. Symbols from the Exorcist's doctrine. You dare not stay long enough to be recognized. Besides, you now know who is behind the atrocities. The question on your mind as you duck up a shadowy staircase is, why? I think we're gonna swing up to the palace and see what's up there. You gain entrance to the palace on the final day of Ramadan, where there is to be an enormous feast to break the month of fasting. While there, you manage to sneak off into the shadows in order to investigate some suspicions you have about the Sultan's advisors. As you are passing the extensive kitchens, one of the cooks happens to make eye contact with you. "My friend," he says. You look at him cautiously before realizing that he is the father of the child you rescued from the kidnappers. He comes up to you and shakes your hand profusely. "Not a day goes by that I do not thank God for you in my prayers." You smile at him, hoping to end the conversation before anyone else takes notice of you. "Please," he says, leading you into the kitchen, "I have no money to offer, but I can give you something which is better than money." He pulls you over to a cauldron of simmering stew and doles out a small bowl for you. "This brew is made only for the Sultan. It is a special soup which he takes every night before bed. It has magical properties. Just this once, between you and I offer it to you, as thanks for rescuing my child. I can accept the soup and drink it, or turn him down and move on." "Already got a fucking mutant arm, let's drink this soup." "Thank you," you say, and taste it. The broth is strong and full of spices, but it is very good. As you drink it, you ask the man why it is so special. "It strengthens virility, so that the Sultan can keep his wives and concubines happy in bed." Was not the answer you expected, but certainly a little more virility can never hurt. "Thank you very much," you reply, handing the bowl back to him. "It is the least I can do," he replies. "Thank you for bringing back my son." You shake his hand and then leave the kitchen, continuing on your way. You do notice that you feel somewhat stronger than you did when you entered. You feel a sense of confidence and a certain level of prowess. Whatever was in that bowl was certainly powerful. I gained some strength back, alright. I'm going back to the catacombs. On your way through the catacombs, you notice one skeleton in particular pointing off down a specific row of graves. You wonder if perhaps this is a directional marker for some underground cult, and follow in the direction it points. After a little walking, you come to another skeleton, propped up in its coffin and pointing in another direction. You follow that, as well as the directions of 4 others, until you come to a door. A door made entirely of bones. There is a lock, perhaps requiring a skeleton key? That was corny. But there is also a small metal bowl, with spike rising out of it. An inscription above the bowl reads, "Blood for bones." Prick your finger and offer some blood to the bones, or try and pick the lock. We'll do this. Blood rituals are always very knightly. Content to play along for the moment, you prick your finger on the spike. It stings, and a few droplets of red fall from your finger into the bowl. There is a hiss, and the door creaks open. You shine your torch inside and discover a chapel made entirely from human bones. That's gross. Skulls, femurs, hips, spinal columns. There must be the remains of 200 people used in constructing the room. Kneeling before a skeletal Christ nailed to a bone cross is a hooded figure. What is this place, you ask? The Chapel of Death. The Chapel of Death, whispers the hooded figure. You step inside. I'm looking for the king of the catacombs, you say. I'm looking for the one who steals children from their beds and brings them below. The hooded figure rises. He has been here. He has given his blood for the bones. And now so have you. The figure turns, and you are horrified to see that his face is mostly rotted away from disease, leaving little more than a macabre skull behind. The death priest raises a long, bony finger to point at you. You have made your offering to the dead, and now the dead shall ever be known to you. Having had enough, you back out of the chapel and make your retreat into the catacombs. As you leave, you can't shake the feeling that the dead are somehow more familiar to you now. But, I think the catacombs are maybe not the place that the knight should be focusing on. Damn, I am pretty magic. I want to keep going with this. Your trek through the catacombs is one of darkness and silence. That is, until you catch a distant scream echoing off the stone. It is followed by another and another. Figuring out the direction of the cries is difficult, but after some trial and error, you find yourself on approach. Then you see the dim lights of flickering candles as you emerge into a small underground arena. Excuse me there. Surly men stand around a depression in the floor, shouting and laughing as they cheer on something fighting in the center. You move to get a better view, and are horrified to find that the fighting pit is full of children. This is awful. They are dressed in the scantest of rags, and all of them are wielding dirty knives, stabbing and slicing their way through one another as they roar and cry like feral animals. Piles of mutilated adolescents litter the floor, covered in blood as the last remaining few grapple and stab one another, to the horrific delight of the gathered ruffians. I can do something to stop the gruesome spectacle, or try to ascertain who the leader is and deal with them personally. I'll try to ascertain who the leader is. It breaks your heart as the last child's blood sprays across the corpses of his fellows, as he collapses to the soaking pile. A few men in the crowd cheer while others boo, breaking their wine bottles on the floor before wandering off. You'd like to kill every last one of them, but your ire has turned toward the man doling out the winnings to the few who had correctly bet on the final child to die. The man smiles as he counts his profit from the depraved event, and you approach him. "Where did you get the children?" you ask. The man nods to two of his thugs to deal with you. Unlike them, however, you are not drunk, and you are expertly trained in killing men who are larger than you. As their bodies collapse to the stone, you shove the money man against the wall and put your weapon to his throat. Whirr! "The knights," he confesses, terrified. "The knights hand over the children when they've finished with them. Why do you care? They're just heathens." You stick your sword through his throat and wrench it back out. The man collapses, spilling his arteries across the floor, as you turn back to the horrible carnage. This town is fucked up. Alright, I am really losing my charm. Your weapon clangs sharply against the sword of a bearded knight. The shingle gives way under your foot, and you barely manage to adjust your weight before you slide off the roof to certain death. The knight presses his attack, and you're forced backward along the dome of the Hagia Sophia Mosque. "Your name will be added to the list of the judged," shouts the knight. "You will join your heathen brothers and sisters impaled on the pikes of hell, and your sultan will at last feel the fires of the master he serves. With that, you duck a swing of his sword and spin to strike him hard against his rib cage. The armor under his cloak keeps him from being hurt, but the force of the blow sends him careening off the roof. With a frightened scream, he plummets to the street below, his armored body skewering itself on the spikes of the mosque's fence. As you look down on his broken body, quickly soaking to red, you realize what his final words portend. They are going to assassinate the Sultan. So maybe I should stop playing around in the catacombs and try to talk to the Sultan about this. You've been invited to the palace to something called the Visitors' Council. As any invitation to the palace is an opportunity to learn more, you accept. What you find that night is a large forum filled with people from all over Europe and the Middle East, all discussing the state of the city and what is to be done about it. There does not, however, seem to be any format or structure to the gathering, which strikes you as strange. How is this council supposed to get anything accomplished? It's at that moment that you notice a European woman standing in a far doorway. There's something striking about her, and she's looking right at you. She then motions with her finger for you to follow and disappears around the corner. You are considering following when you hear someone call to you. You turn and see a crowd of men sitting around on couches amidst the gathering. One of them says, "You're the one who's investigating the murders, aren't you? Come, tell us what you've found." I'm going to follow the woman. You follow the woman through a kiosk to a private residence on the palace grounds. She leads you into a small courtyard where another stunning young woman is bathing in a pool by moonlight. When she sees you, she emerges, her brown hair clinging to her back and shoulders. "I was hoping you'd come," she says. "Were you?" you reply. "Indeed, since the moment I saw you." The woman who you followed opens a satin robe and the woman from the pool slips into it. "You may go," she says. The woman you followed bows, saying, "Countess Karnstein?" She and the other servants leave, and then it is merely you and the Countess. She sits down on a couch and pours a glass of wine. She holds it up to you. "Join me?" she asks. Her gaze is compelling. You walk over and sit next to her, taking the wine. You notice that she doesn't pour one for herself. The Countess runs a hand through your hair. "You are very beautiful for a warrior," she says. "Thank you," you reply. She smiles, cocking her head to the side as her hand rests on your cheek. "But something tells me you've gone too long since anyone told you that." You tuck your hair behind your ear. "I'm not the type who needs a lot of compliments," you reply. She leans in, whispering, "No, you're a woman of action. It's in your blood." Her lips brush against yours, and you stab your dagger into her heart. Damn! She goes rigid, collapsing to the couch as her eyes become pearl white and her fangs elongate through her stone-like paralysis. "I was fooled by a vampire once," you say. "Never again." You draw your weapon and slice her head from her shoulders. The blood pours out across the sofa as you stand. You swallow the glass of wine in one gulp, setting the glass on a table. You wipe the blood from your sword and walk away, having rid Istanbul from at least one hungry darkness. Alright. Go me, I guess. Having received an invitation, you appear at the palace for the Sultan's grand ball. Nothing could have prepared you for so opulent an affair. No expense has been spared on the night. As you drift through the throngs of guests, you hear bits of conversation. Someone mentions a pleasure ship drifting just down the river. Someone else mentions the jacket that they just purchased, whose leather is as soft as human skin. That's a gross comparison. Someone else mentions something about the prince having just turned 16, the age where he may leave the palace for the first time. All of these tidbits of conversation drift past your ears as you make your way into the Hall of Icons. There, among the massive paintings that line the walls, you see the Sultan mingling with some richly dressed guests. Keep your mission secret from the Sultan and just enjoy the paintings, or approach the Sultan and ask him for aid in your mission. I'll, I'll make myself known. I'll be polite. You approach the Sultan, getting the okay from his steward to speak. You introduce yourself and thank the Sultan for the invitation. He nods to you and asks what brings you to Istanbul. You tell him that you are there to discover the reason behind all the disappearances and killings, in order to save the people of the city from darkness. The Sultan nods and says, your dedication to others is admirable, but your investigation is unnecessary. Meet my Grand Vizier, Suleiman. You turn to find an imposing man in rich robes as the Sultan continues. I have charged Suleiman with rooting out the elements behind the strife in my city, and bringing them to justice. Your own involvement in these matters will only be a hindrance to him and his men. Thank you for your concern, but you must leave these matters to the proper authorities. You start to reply, but the Sultan is already being led away by his steward to speak to someone else. Vizier Suleiman raises his glass to you in a sinister fashion, and turns away as well. Well, that's not horribly ominous. And I lose charm for that son of a bitch. I don't care if the Sultan dies anymore. I'm going back to the catacombs. You race through the catacombs in pursuit of a fleeing knight. As he runs ahead of you, he pulls a handful of something from his pouches and tosses them onto the ground behind him. You hear the soft tink of metal and realize that he is dropping caltrops, spiked balls that will easily puncture through your boots and cripple your feet while he gets away. Unable to see where they've landed by the flickering light of your torch, you duck down a parallel corridor in order to run up alongside him. Unfortunately, there is a gaping hole in that side of the corridor, and your momentum takes you over the edge. You flail your limbs out as you slide down a steep slab of rock, then over the edge of a wide chasm. Your hands only barely grab the edge of the massive pit before you plummet into darkness. Your torch, however, does. You look down as the flame hits bottom and you see piles and piles of corpses. Some are new, others are ancient. That's when you notice some of the bodies are city guards. Their uniforms are gone, but you recognize their faces from when you first entered Istanbul. Pull yourself out of the pit and to safety, or try to climb down and inspect. I should do this, but I'm gonna inspect, because that's stupid. Your descent is harrowing indeed, but you stop halfway down when you notice something concealed by an overhang. It's a door completely concealed from view by anyone looking down from above. You pick your way over to it and force it open. Inside, you're amazed to discover the long-abandoned hideout of the Constantinople militia. Some of the greatest defenders of the city hid out in these very chambers when invaders roamed the streets above. They were not so different than you are now. You feel the presence of great men and women, and as a soldier, your resolve is greatly strengthened by finding such an important remnant from the secret past of Istanbul. Alright, yeah, I'm cool with that. That's the end of Chapter 5. Not very charming, but, getting pretty strong and fast. Alright, I'm going to take another break for now, and I will talk to you guys next time.